Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So today's video we're going to be talking about champions being released in 2020 so far and the fact that the vast majority of them feel lackluster. So I'm going to go through a list of every single champion that has been released this year very quickly. So we're going to start off with Nova, Squirrel Girl, Longshot, Mojo, Moleman, Terax, Sorcerer Supreme, Storm. I also added Black Widow, Deadly Origins and Red Guardian, but I'm not going to discuss them too much because we still do not have all the relevant and necessary information to actually kind of like properly evaluate and judge them. However, we can certainly discuss every single rest of those champions and kind of like flat out hand up. First and foremost, I think that the only kind of like relatively meta important champion that has been released thus far has been Sorcerer Supreme. And even Sorcerer Supreme, even though she is extremely useful champion, she has access to slow, some small form of power control, most notably very good region on the block, and all in all quite interesting mechanics. And she is also extremely user-friendly. She's arguably one of also like the least flashy champions released, that her quality might not be apparent because there's not going to be insane amount of numbers. She's just like a very solid mystic with access to slow debuffs, and that kind of like makes her fit in very well in kind of necessities presented by today's game. For instance, she's very good counters to the champion boss. She can deal with the high attacks in 6.3 and 6.4. She can nullify stuff, and she's gonna kind of like fit in organically very well in like the most difficult piece of content in game right now currently, and that makes her kind of like be great, be the best champion that's released so far, because she actually has uses that matter. And that's again kind of like the same way why Warlock is considered to be an absolutely fantastic champion. No, Warlock doesn't have insane damage output, he doesn't have any kind of like crazy amount of utilities and abilities. Okay, he has quite a bit of utilities, but most of them kind of just happen to work out in very difficult matchups. The fact that he has that armor buff makes him suitable for Havoc. The fact that he has bleed enabled him to deal with 631 Medusa. The fact that he has double immunities, so on and so forth. So Warlock isn't necessarily a busted champion in the sense that he's very complicated, complex, or absolutely broken and insanely powerful. He just happens to fit extremely well the needs of the current meta, and that is the case with Sorcerer Supreme. Very balanced champion, just happens to kind of like be in demand based on everything else that is happening around us. Now, every other champion, I would argue, is definitely several steps below, and only kind of like worthwhile mention I would even take to Mojo, because again, he is a 6.2 champion counter. He has some decent uses offensively as well, and he has also become like one of the most nightmare AW defenders. Longshot, I personally at this point am very insistent that he was extremely overhyped, and actually the realistic amount of scenarios where he works great is vastly exaggerated, because after I took my Longshot to rank 5, I purposely tried to bring him into as many Act 6 paths as I could, and it just happened that he doesn't work in majority of the lanes in Act 6, for instance, because either the opponent will prevent him from throwing special attacks, and without his special 2 his damage output is pathetic, with nodes like Static Blast, Plagued Mind, or Power Struggle, or whatever. Opponent's gonna be Incinerate immune. Again, Longshot is worthless in that kind of scenario. Move on. Opponent can shrug off debuffs, thus Incinerate. Longshot is worthless. Opponent is stun immune, or he has limber. It's very hard to use Longshot, and it's not really worth it. Then opponent has rapid metabolism. He gets rid of that Incinerate insanely quickly. And the list seemed to go on and on and on, and then I realized that pretty much anything Longshot can do, Dr. Doom, Black Widow, Clairvoyant, Morningstar do almost as good, but they do so many more things. So overall, I think Longshot was definitely overhyped, and realistically, he's extremely underwhelming champion with subpar damage output in like 9 out of 10 realistic scenarios. But okay, of course, if you find a resistor node and opponent doesn't happen to be debuff immune, or if you find a big Venom, yes, he's a very cool champion. Now, Mojo is kind of starting to grow on me, but I still don't really trust him enough, in a sense that he's quite squishy and there's still quite a bit of an RNG aspect depending on which kind of like prompts you're gonna get, and the fact that there simply aren't that many buffs that would expire. But all in all, he's still kind of growing on me, and the fact that he has access to passive degen that pretty much no champion in game is immune to, I actually rate him as the second best champion released out this year, because that is a unique aspect of ability, and kind of like in a sense where Gladiator Hulk is great or good champion just because of that face me ability, and it's so unique and it's so potent and it quite often comes in handy. I would be ready to kind of like claim that Mojo is also amazing champion because he has very potent and strong and easy access to passive degen that pretty much nothing and no one is immune to. Therefore, I do put kind of like quite a lot of stock in Mojo as well, and also coincidentally Sorcerer Supreme and Mojo are likely to be my two next rank ups in the Mystic class to date. Now Nova, subpar Medicore damage output and literally zero offensive utility. Only time you can see him is somewhere on Alliance for Defense or in a quest as an annoying opponent, but all in all the guy is just pathetic. Blue color schemed version of Magneto with that yellow bucket on his head. Squirrel Girl is a champion that puts a smile on everybody's face. It's cool, nobody's like really pissed off, oh my god, I built Squirrel Girl, it's so bad. No, everybody wants Squirrel Girl because she's fun, she looks cool, she's goofy, she's just a champion that naturally brings out a smile on your face. However, she's hardly the most potent and necessary champion on your roster. She will not be your AQ Queen or AW MVP. She's not going to be a champion that absolutely shreds everything in Act 6 for you, or you're like your go-to champion for everything. No, she's a champion that you like to use because it's fun, but again, you can only use her realistically on kind of like semi-not so serious scenarios. She's too squishy realistically for Act 6 to be kind of like your solid dominant go-to option for a default fight. She doesn't have nowhere near enough utility to kind of like warrant dropping in all of the health potions in her in the world. So albeit she's really fun, solid bursty damage output on level 2s, but it's just not quite good enough to fit in meta, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, let's address the fact that yes, she's not insanely powerful or super useful. Level 2s are fun, she's fun champion. Not every champion has to be busted, and she just isn't the busted champion. Right, Mole Man. Now Mole Man is an absolute rubbish in every single aspect of the way. There's nothing decent about him. Effectively, they made a knockoff version of Captain Marvel movie version, made it 73 times worth with lower uptime of his charges. He has guaranteed crits that crit for like 1700 or whatever, and it's just nothing in that champion really that kind of makes sense. He could be a great champion if his crits would hit harder, if his charges would remain longer, if he could shrug off debuffs while his monster while he's enraged, and also if he wouldn't lose his true accuracy. But all of these things matter, and that made it like very, very watered down, absolutely crap version of Captain Marvel movie, and it just is worthless. Like, he's not good for Alliance or defense, he's certainly not good for any kind of offense or whatsoever, and even quite annoying to use in AQ because he yeah, whatever. Okay, use him in AQ. Sorry, not AQ. Use him for in arena. That's what he's good for. But yeah, Mole Man is an absolute fail of a character. I don't understand how he actually made it into the game the way he is right now. Somebody severely dropped the ball there, and 100% I can guarantee you that person did not get the Employee of the Month bonus. Whatever. Terax, again, is very similar. He's semi-decent in Alliance for defense because of his like defensive capabilities, but even that is not really all that troublesome because he's a champion that typically can easily be either quaked or countered because he happens to deal energy damage with his rock field, and there are many champions who can capitalize on that. And all in all, yeah, he's decent-ish on defense, but absolutely pathetic on offense. If you're asking how pathetic, then I would say pretty much like Groot level pathetic. That is legitimately laughable damage output, and he consistently can be easily outdamaged by champions that are solo ranks and like levels below him with like 1/3 of his actual, I don't know, base attack or something. Because he is, again, a champion that had quite a bit of promise, that could be good, but just wasn't, because his damage automatically shuts him out. Like, with that damage output, he could be immune to every single debuff in the game. With that damage output, he could have unblockable hits. With that damage output, he could have infinite regen to the point where he can only be one-shotted with a level 3. He would still not be a good champion because every fight would take about 37 days and nobody has time for that. Okay, obviously that is an exaggeration, but the point being is any kind of potential utility that that guy might have is being absolutely wasted by the fact that he hits so weak that nobody would even want to put a second glance on him, and rightfully so, because why the hell would you want to go in for a 350 hit fight which you can finish in 50 hits using a decent champion? Right, Sorcerer Supreme I discussed, I think is by far the best champion released this year. Love seeing another slow champion, love seeing a mystic slow champion, first in the class, and all in all I definitely do enjoy her. I think she has right amount of damage, I think she has right amount of utilities, she has very cool character design, and this is probably the person who got Employee of the Month bonus for designing Sorcerer Supreme, and God help me, I hope it's not the same person. It can't be, man, it can't be. I don't believe for a second that the person who would design Mole Man could design Sorcerer Supreme, if that makes sense. But either way, Sorcerer Supreme is awesome. And Storm, again, Storm is a champion that's effectively without purpose competing in a class where she just has no business being in. So when you put Storm next to champions like Domino, Havoc, Sunspot, and then you put Storm. Now, Storm has pretty much probably the lowest health pool. She's like the most squishy one of them all. She probably has the worst crit rate, and she has the hardest game style where you are reliant on many different buffs. You are reliant on game having an aggressive pace because you need to build up these prowess charges, otherwise they would expire. At the same time, if you cannot throw your special attack, if you cannot be fast and aggressive, if any of your buffs get nullified, all of your kind of like potential value go out of the window, unlike Domino, Havoc, or Sunspot, for instance. So she just doesn't measure up to the standards that have been set in her class for champions of such nature. And in essence, yes, if you have Sunspot or Havoc, you literally have pretty much no need for Storm Pyramid X, aside if you like looking at those blue skirts. But all that being said, she basically is a damage dealing champion without a solid enough base of the damage, because she is outclassed in terms of damage definitely by Sunspot and many other mutants. And at the same time, she's like the hardest to use. Only thing that somewhat same Storm Pyramid X is that passive stun when her actual stuns get shrugged off. And that is kind of cool because that will help many kind of like newer players or players who are struggling with stuff like Masochism, with Kingpin or Agent Venom, and basically tenacity lanes, which are getting popular in Act 6. But again, it's a type of utility that's not necessarily game-changing or not necessarily enables her to take these fights. It just makes it more convenient in a sense that it's a nice to have kind of like utility bit, but it's not necessary. Kind of like, what's the best way to explain? If you have two nodes that your opponent has, it has Masochism and it has Freezer Burn. Now, which node do you have to counter? You can just deal with Masochism, you can play around it, but you need to make sure your champion can deal with Freezer Burn, right? And it's the same kind of sense, like, it's a nice to have that she's gonna have easier time against Masochism, against Tenacity, against Kingpin, against Agent Venom, but it's not exactly the type of thing that you absolutely must be able to counter. It's a type of thing that you can play around by using a bit of thumb movement. And all of those things kind of being considered, that I feel that 2020 champions have been relatively lost. Many of them have underwhelming damage output that pretty much automatically disqualifies them from any kind of relevant metagame, and half of other champions simply do not seem to have like any specific purpose in the game, like Longshot or Storm Pyramid X or Squirrel Girl. Squirrel Girl's fun, but so what? Storm Pyramid X is okay, but everything before her was better. Mole Man, Terax, just damage output alone disqualifies them from everything and anything. No one is a champion that's lost. So the questions are that definitely come by it. What the hell is happening? Now, one theory would be that Kabam is afraid to release too powerful characters, because then they would have to do quote-unquote balance changes. And that is a viable theory. I think that after all of the fiasco with Call Obsidian and the rest of the champions that got balanced, nobody kind of like wants to ever announce to this community that some of the champions are going to get down-tuned, so they kind of like put in the lowest possible stats in all of these champions and then release them, and then see if the champions are still getting even a mediocre use. They would be kind of like, yeah, they're doing good enough. Or if, for instance, Maulman case, like nobody probably uses Maulman, they're going to be like, we're going to increase his attack by a bit with the heroes now. But I guess that they just kind of like are running on like the bare bone minimum settings at the moment, because nobody wants to balance these champions down and cause another community uproar. Would be one of my guesses. Second guess would be that Kabam is trying to lower overall base hero kind of like damage output, utility, and power level. And they're doing it by releasing new Medicore champions that house certain pieces and bits of utility, which are kind of like handy and nice to have. They have certain immunities, but none of them are like very busted or broken. They're like quote-unquote balanced to a degree. And at the same point, they're releasing more and more nodes and champions that kind of like directly or indirectly counter the most overpowered things in the game currently, such as like Ghost or Mega Red or Corvus or whatever. And then trying to bring down the power level they had set up in 2018, 2019, and this power level they probably will try to kind of like equal them out by, yes, simply not releasing very strong characters and designing more counters to already overpowered characters. And thus they will kind of like create a meta where more champions are options, but less champions can do everything, kind of, in a sense, which would be ideally cool, which I would not be kind of like against at all. The only problem with that is that I generally do not believe they are capable of doing it in a very kind of balanced and fair way, and I wouldn't trust that company that cannot keep its servers running for more than a day to actually redesign the entire meta of the game kind of like on a whim. So but who knows, and it might work out great. In the hindsight, again, we need to give Kabam credit where credit is due. They have kept this game running for 5 years now. But one thing's for sure, the idea of new champions that are coming out in 2020 seems to be severely different from the idea that we had for champions in 2018 and 2019. So let me know what you guys think about this whole thing. Are you overall satisfied with champions in 2020? Do you think they're busted? Do you think all of them suck? Do you think something is happening in the background that is actually causing this, or this is just kind of like, I don't know, a streak of unlucky champion designers doing a bad job? But yeah, either way, let me know what you guys think about today's video, and if you did like it, then hit that like button, hit that sub button. If you did that, then hey, I have a small Baby Yoda for you, because who does not like Baby Yoda? If in case you are some weird individual that doesn't like Baby Yoda, then you are perfectly free to show yourself out. I have had about enough of you, but either way, I am done for today, and I'm gonna catch you guys soon. See ya.